And joining me now from across the pond, an interview we've been trying to do for several weeks now, we are joined by Charlie Veitch, founder of the British Love Police. Recently, he was invited to be a part of a British BBC documentary series about conspiracy theorists and was taken to see some of the sites around 9/11 here in the United States and talk to a variety of experts, and has now officially changed his position from being one of the most outspoken advocates of 9/11 truth to saying it couldn't have possibly been the government because they're not competent enough to have pulled something off. Charlie Veitch, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I just want to correct you there. I don't think I was one of the most prominent advocates. It's just that my channel's quite high profile, and I've mentioned it a few times. I've never said I was a 9/11 truther, and I've never really planted my stake in the ground behind 9/11 truth. It's just that I took an interest in it, as we all do.
Okay, well then we'll come back to that. But first, tell us about the story. You were invited to take part in this documentary series. What did you see that fundamentally changed your mind?
It's not so much what I saw that fundamentally changed my mind. It's just the whole experience of it and thinking clearly on my feet at ground zero, at the top of building 7, at the Pentagon, at Flight 93. And a lot of conspiracy theories aren't really based in fact. And I got to grill experts, be they retired or not retired, in their chosen field about what happened. And they explained to me quite reasonably, quite logically, that it wasn't a controlled demolition, that it wasn't an inside job, that the intelligence agencies effed up, basically.
So did the BBC give you a chance to, in that same context, hear from some of the critics of the official government story about what happened on 9/11?
Well, yeah, some of the people we spoke to ex-CIA, and they were incredibly critical of the 9/11 Commission report. They were incredibly critical of the CIA, and they were calling for Bush to be impeached and for Cheney to be thrown in jail. So, but we also did.
But hold on what grounds specifically were they calling for those charges then?
Well, basically the incompetence failures around 9/11, and also the lying about the WMDs in Iraq and the invasion there.
So all stuff that happened on the day of or afterwards, nothing in premeditation, nothing in terms of conspiracy, let it happen on purpose or made it happen on purpose. But you're saying you talked to people at the CIA and FBI who were saying that for what they did on that day and what they did following, Bush and Cheney should be investigated and possibly prosecuted for their actions around 9/11 and covering up government incompetence.
Yes, they did. And 2 of the participants, I was one of 5 people, they got to meet engineers that did support the controlled demolition analysis. But because of the way the program was filmed, I wasn't in that group that got to meet the skeptics. I just got to meet very dispassionate people who I could tell by hanging out with them, they wouldn't be the kind of normal men that would be terrified of federal agents or part of some giant Illuminati conspiracy. They were just normal Americans.
So were there any specific facts that your revelation has hinged on, or was it just sort of like the narrative you had isn't as strong as the narrative that the BBC presented you with?
That's a very loaded question, Adam. Firstly, it wasn't a revelation, and I have to, I can't accept the 2 options you've given me there.
Okay.
It wasn't a revelation. It was just a kind of guess. I'd spent 4 or 5 years looking at the conspiratorial view of 9/11, and then before I went to America, I'd started to have my doubts, saying, wait a minute, what if those buildings fell pretty much as we've been explained? What if building 7, there's some strange anomaly there which we don't know because we're not engineers? What if I'm wrong, basically? And I went to America, and the main one I was grilling the engineers and the controlled demolition expert guy was how come one of the towers started to tip over and then it kind of corrected itself and fell through. But then when you actually study, and there's countless studies of how the actual World Trade Center is built with the middle columns and the outside bit, the stuff in the middle is just air.
Okay, Charlie, we're going to have a chance to get into those details because we're going to have you back on to talk about this with Luke Rudowski and Jake DeLiberto when Luke gets back in a couple weeks. But you're saying that you've gone, for what happened on Building 7, you're now accepting the government story of some fluke rather than some of the very contradicting testimonies we've had of controlled demolition in response to some fluke or some other damage that day.
I think the truth is somewhere in the middle, Adam. I think the conspiracy theory side is not fully correct, and I think the official government line is basically that, a propaganda.
Okay, fair enough. We'll have a chance to get back on that. We have just a second left. Why do you think so many people are upset with you for having made this change in your position?
Because maybe they invested too much in my opinion, I guess.
Or emotional investment in the 9/11 truth movement in general, perhaps?
I think so, yes.
Well, I appreciate you having the courage to come on and talk about this and explain it. We will get into this again in the future, but also thank you for having the courage to re-examine your premises and not being afraid to change your conclusions. Charlie Veitch of the British Love Police from London. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Adam.
Outstanding. All right.